Jake Murphy walked down the long metal hallway of the space station, carrying his toolbox in one hand and a small tablet in the other. The hallway was huge, built for aliens much taller than humans. Above his head, strange lights flickered in, patterns that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. The station was called Harmony's Edge, and it was supposed to be a place where different alien races worked together. Jake had been here for 6 months now, fixing broken things and keeping the station running. Most days he felt invisible. A group of Karathi soldiers walked past him. They were 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and faces like angry lizards. Their heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. They didn't look at Jake. To them, he was just another small human who fixed toilets and air vents. Jake reached the maintenance room in Sector 7. He pulled out his tools and opened the wall panel. Inside was a mess of wires and pipes that carried power and water through the station. Most aliens found this work boring, but Jake liked it. When he fixed something, it stayed fixed. The air vent above him made a strange humming sound. Jake frowned and climbed up on his ladder to check it. The sound wasn't normal. He pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the vent. The numbers on the screen were wrong. The power flowing through this section was too high. "Excuse me," said a voice behind him. Jake turned around. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms stood in the doorway. This was Dr. Vextar, one of the Karathi science team leaders. He wore a white coat and had small metal devices attached to his head. "I need you to fix the lights in Lab 4, Dr. Vextar said. His voice sounded like he was talking to a child. "They keep flickering during our important experiments." "I can do that," Jake said. "But first, I found something strange in the power system here. The readings are—" "I don't have time for your small problems," Dr. Vextar interrupted. "The lights in Lab 4 are more important. Do that job first." Jake wanted to explain that power problems could be dangerous, but Dr. Vextar was already walking away. The alien muttered something in his own language that Jake was sure wasn't polite. Jake climbed down from his ladder and packed his tools. He had learned not to argue with the alien scientists. They thought humans were too stupid to understand important things. But Jake had been an engineer for 15 years before coming to this station. He knew when something was wrong. The walk to Lab 4 took him through the main plaza of the station. This was where different alien races met and talked. The ceiling was made of clear metal, and through it Jake could see stars and distant planets. Near the center of the plaza stood Silara, a Velan diplomat. The Velans looked almost like humans, except they had wings and their skin sparkled like jewels. Silara was talking to a group of other aliens about trade agreements. "Humans are so eager to please," Silara was saying. Her voice was musical but cold. "They work so hard at simple jobs. It's quite sweet, really. Like watching children play at being adults." The other aliens laughed. Jake kept walking, his face hot with anger. He had heard comments like this many times. The aliens thought humans were new to space travel and didn't know much about technology. They were wrong, but Jake couldn't tell them that. Lab 4 was full of expensive equipment that hummed and blinked with colored lights. Jake found the broken light panel and opened it up. As he worked, he listened to the scientists talking. "The energy readings from the outer system are getting stronger," one alien said. "Probably just solar storms," another replied. "Nothing to worry about." Jake's hands stopped moving. Energy readings from outer space? He remembered the strange power fluctuations he had found in Sector 7. Maybe they were connected. He finished fixing the lights and left the lab. Instead of going back to his room, Jake went to the station's main computer center. His maintenance badge let him into most areas of the station. The aliens never thought to limit his access because they didn't think he was smart enough to understand. What he saw, the computer center was empty. Jake sat down at a terminal and pulled up the station's sensor logs. He wasn't supposed to look at this information, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear of getting in trouble. The data showed exactly what he expected. For the past 3 weeks, the station's sensors had detected strange energy signals coming. From empty space, the signals were weak but getting stronger. They came in patterns that looked almost like a code. Jake copied the data to his tablet and studied it more carefully. The energy signatures didn't match anything in the station's database. They weren't natural phenomena like solar storms or cosmic radiation. Someone or something was sending these signals on purpose. He tried to access more detailed sensor data, but his security clearance wasn't high enough. Jake thought about taking his findings to Commander Tysak, the station's leader, but he knew what would happen. The commander was a Zephyrian, a race of crystal-like beings who thought they were the smartest creatures in the galaxy. He would dismiss Jake's concerns as human paranoia. Jake saved his work and left the computer center. As he walked back to his quarters, he passed groups of aliens going about their daily business. They laughed and talked in their strange languages, completely unaware that something might be watching them from the darkness of space. In his small room, Jake sat on his bed and stared at the data on his tablet. The energy signals were definitely getting stronger. If they were some kind of beacon or navigation signal, then something was using them to find the station. Jake had learned to trust his instincts during his years as an engineer. Right now, those instincts were telling him that danger was coming to Harmony's edge. The problem was that nobody would listen to a quiet human maintenance worker. He would have to find another way to protect the station and everyone on it. 3 days passed since Jake first noticed the strange energy signals. Each night, he checked the sensor logs when no one was watching. The signals were getting stronger and more frequent. What worried him most was that they seemed to follow a pattern, like someone was sending a message. Jake spent his days doing normal maintenance work, but his mind was always thinking about the mysterious signals. He fixed water pipes in the alien quarters and repaired air filters in the food halls. The work kept his hands busy while his brain worked on the puzzle. During lunch break, Jake sat in the corner of the main cafeteria. The room was filled with aliens eating strange foods that smelled like metal and flowers. He pretended to read technical manuals while listening to conversations around him. At a table near the windows, Dr. Vextar was talking quietly with Colonel Raxus, a high-ranking Karathi military officer. Jake had seen the colonel before, but never knew why he was on a research station. Military officers usually stayed on warships, not science facilities. The preparations are almost complete, Dr. Vextar said in a low voice. Another week, and we'll have everything we need. Good, Colonel Raxus replied. The less time we spend here, the better. These other races ask too many questions. Jake kept his eyes on his book but strained to hear more. What preparations? What were they planning? But the two Karathi switched to their own language, making clicking and hissing sounds that Jake couldn't understand. After lunch, Jake went to fix a broken computer terminal in the diplomatic wing. This was where aliens from different worlds met to discuss trade and politics. The hallways were fancier here, with artwork from dozens of different planets. He was replacing a damaged circuit board when he heard voices from the next room. Door was slightly open, and Jake recognized Silara's musical voice. "My people are growing impatient," Silara said. "They want to know when the operation will begin." "Soon," replied a voice Jake didn't recognize. It was deep and had a strange echo to it. "The signal confirmations are increasing daily. Our allies are almost in position." Jake's blood turned cold. Signal confirmations? Were they talking about the energy signatures he had been tracking? He tried to move closer to the door without making noise. "What about the other races on this station?" Silara asked. "The Zephyrians." "And the others?" "They suspect nothing," the strange voice answered. "They think we're here for scientific research and diplomatic meetings. By the time they realize the truth, it will be too late." Heavy footsteps approached the door. Jake quickly grabbed his tools and pretended to work on the computer terminal. A moment later, the door opened and Silara walked out with a being Jake had never seen before. It was tall and wore a black cloak that covered its entire body. Only its eyes were visible, and they glowed with a red light. Silara glanced at Jake, but didn't seem worried. To her, he was just a maintenance worker who couldn't understand important matters. She and her companion walked away, speaking in whispers. Jake's hands shook as he finished his work. There was definitely something happening on the station, something secret and dangerous. But he still didn't know what it was or who was involved. That evening, Jake went back to the computer center. He had learned the security guard's schedule and knew when the room would be empty. He accessed the communication logs and found something that made his stomach drop. Over the past month, someone had been sending coded messages from the station to unknown receivers. The messages were hidden inside normal maintenance reports and supply requests. Jake was good with codes from his engineering training, and he could see patterns in the data. The messages were coordinates, star charts, information about the station's defenses and the number of people on board. Someone was giving detailed intelligence to an outside force. Jake tried to trace where the messages were coming from, but the sender had been clever. They were using different terminals and different access codes. However, Jake noticed that all the messages were sent during times when certain aliens were scheduled to be in those areas. Dr. Vextar had sent 3 messages from the science lab during his evening shifts. Silara had sent 2 from the diplomatic wing during lunch breaks. There were others too, but these were the ones Jake could prove. The maintenance worker sat back in his chair and stared at the screen. Dr. Vextar and Silara were spies. They were working with an outside enemy and passing information about the station. The energy signals Jake had been tracking weren't random. They were responses to the messages, confirmation that someone was receiving the intelligence. Jake copied all the evidence to his personal tablet, then carefully erased any trace of his access to the system. He had to be careful. If the spies knew he was investigating them, they might try to stop him or speed up whatever they were planning. The next morning, Jake made a difficult decision. He had to tell someone in authority about what he had discovered. He couldn't handle this alone. He went to the command center and asked to speak with Commander Tysak. The Zephyrian was a tall, crystal-like being with a body that sparkled in the light. He was reviewing duty schedules when Jake entered his office. "What is it, maintenance worker?" Commander Tysak asked without looking up. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Sir, I've discovered something important," Jake said. "I think there are spies on the station. They're sending information to an enemy force." Now the commander looked at him. His crystal eyes reflected the light in patterns that showed he was annoyed. "Spies? What makes you think such a thing?" Jake pulled out his tablet and showed the commander the evidence. The phone coded messages, the energy signals, the coordination between the communications, and the alien schedules. He explained everything he had found over the past few days. Commander Tysak looked at the data for a few seconds, then pushed the tablet back to Jake. "This is nothing more than normal communication traffic and natural space phenomena. You are seeing patterns that don't exist." "But sir, the timing of the messages..." "Enough," the commander interrupted. "You are a maintenance worker, not a security analyst. Your job is to fix broken equipment, not to create conspiracy theories. I suggest you focus on your duties and leave intelligence matters to those with proper training." Jake felt his face turn red with frustration. "Commander, I really think that will be all," Commander Tysak said firmly. "Return to your work. And in the future, don't waste my time with these human fantasies." Jake left the command center feeling defeated. He had solid evidence, but the commander wouldn't listen. Like all the other aliens, He thought humans were too primitive to understand complex situations. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the spies and their mysterious plans. Through his small window, he could see stars scattered across the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, something was coming toward the station, guided by the signals he had detected. He had tried to warn the proper authorities, but they wouldn't listen. If danger was really approaching Harmony's edge, Jake would have to find another way to protect the station and everyone on it. The quiet human maintenance worker was the only one who knew the truth. Now he had to decide what to do with that knowledge. Jake couldn't wait any longer. His latest scan showed a massive fleet of unknown ships moving toward the station. They were still 3 days away, but they were definitely coming. The energy signals had become so strong that even the station's basic sensors should have detected them by now, but nobody was paying attention. The alien crew went about their daily routines as if nothing was wrong. Dr. Vextar continued his experiments in the science labs. Salara held her diplomatic meetings. Commander Tysak reviewed reports and gave orders like any normal day. Jake knew that when the enemy fleet arrived, everyone on Harmony's edge would be caught completely off guard. Thousands of innocent beings would die because the station's leaders refused to listen to a human maintenance worker. He had to take action, even if it meant breaking rules and risking his job. Jake made his way to the old maintenance section in the lowest level of the station. This area was rarely visited, and the equipment here was outdated, but still functional. In a storage room filled with spare parts and old machinery, Jake found what he was looking for: an emergency communication array that was supposed to be used only during major disasters. It was connected to long-range transmitters that could send messages across the galaxy. Jake powered up the old system and tuned it to a frequency he remembered from his past. It was a military channel that most people didn't know about. He took a deep breath and sent out a coded distress signal. The message was simple: station under threat. Enemy fleet approaching. Request immediate assistance. Murphy. Then Jake waited. He didn't know if anyone would receive his message or if they would care enough to respond. All he could do was hope that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone was listening. 6 hours later, Jake's tablet beeped with an incoming message. His heart pounded as he read the response. Message received. Help is coming. Stand by. The next morning, Jake was fixing a broken water recycler when alarms began sounding throughout the station. A voice over the communication system announced that an unknown ship was approaching Harmony's edge. Jake dropped his tools and ran to the nearest window. In the distance, he could see a sleek human ship moving toward the station. It wasn't huge like the alien battleships he had seen, but it looked fast and dangerous. The name painted on its hull read, U.S. Defiant. The alien crew was confused and worried. Unscheduled ships weren't supposed to arrive without warning. Commander Tysak ordered all department heads to meet in the main plaza to discuss this unexpected visitor. Jake followed the crowd of aliens to the plaza. Everyone was talking nervously in their different languages. Through the clear ceiling, they could see the human ship getting closer. A bright light filled the plaza as the ship's transport beam activated. When the light faded, 5 humans in military uniforms stood in the center of the room. The lead figure was a woman with short brown hair and captain's insignia on her uniform. The aliens stared at the humans with surprise and some annoyance. They weren't used to being interrupted by unannounced visitors, especially humans. Commander Tysak stepped forward, his crystal body reflecting the light in angry patterns. I am Commander Tysak of this station, he said, his wind chime voice. You have no authority to board this facility without permission. Explain. Your presence immediately. The human captain looked around the room with calm professional eyes. I am Captain Lisa Hayes of the United Earthship Defiant. We received a priority distress signal from the station. I need to speak with the individual who sent that signal." Jake's mouth went dry. He had expected human military ships to respond to his message, but he hadn't thought about what would happen when they arrived. Now hundreds of aliens were staring at the human captain, waiting to see who had dared to call for outside help. "No one from this station sent any distress signal," Commander Tysak said firmly. "There must be some mistake. We are conducting peaceful research here. There is no emergency." Captain Hayes pulled out a small device and checked its screen. The signal came from Maintenance Section 7, Level 12. It was sent using emergency protocols and included a valid military identification code. Jake felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to step forward. "I sent the message," he said quietly. The aliens began talking loudly in their own languages. Jake could hear anger and confusion in their voices. Dr. Vextar pushed through the crowd, his gray face twisted with rage. "This human has no authority to contact outside forces," Dr. Vextar shouted. "He is just a maintenance worker. He has caused this disruption over nothing." Captain Hayes walked toward Jake, and the crowd of aliens moved aside to let her pass. Jake expected her to be angry with him for causing trouble, but instead she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She saluted him. "Thank you for the warning, Chief Petty Officer Murphy," Captain Hayes said in a clear, strong voice. "Your service record speaks for itself." The plaza fell completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Service record? The aliens were staring at him with confusion and surprise. "I think there's been some mistake," Commander Tysak said slowly. "This human is a maintenance worker. He has no military rank or training." Captain Hayes smiled and turned to face the commander. "Jake Murphy is a decorated veteran of the Terran border wars. He served for 12 years in the Earth Space Force Engineering Corps, specializing in deep space reconnaissance and threat assessment. He volunteered for assignment to the station 6 months ago." Jake watched as the information sank in among the alien crew. Dr. Vextar's angry expression changed to one of worry. Silara took a step backward, her wings folding tight against her body. "Chief Murphy has been monitoring potential security threats to this facility," Captain Hayes continued. "His report indicates that hostile forces are approaching this station, and that there may be enemy agents already on board." The aliens began talking excitedly again, but now their voices carried fear instead of anger. Commander Tysak's crystal body dimmed as he processed this new information. "Chief Murphy," Captain Hayes said, turning back to Jake, "please brief me on the current situation." Jake straightened his shoulders and found his voice. For the first time since arriving at Harmony's Edge, he spoke with confidence and authority. "Captain, I've detected coded transmissions being sent from the station to unknown receivers. The messages contain intelligence about our defenses, crew, numbers, and strategic positions. I've identified at least 2 individuals involved in these transmissions." Jake pointed at Dr. Vextar and Silara. "These 2 have been sending regular reports to an enemy force. My analysis suggests that a hostile fleet is approximately 60 hours away from this position." Dr. Vextar started to protest, but Captain Hayes held up her hand for silence. "Chief Murphy, do you have evidence to support these claims?" Jake pulled out his tablet and handed it to the captain. As she reviewed the data, her expression grew more serious. "This is excellent intelligence work, Chief. You've potentially saved thousands of lives." The captain looked up at the crowd of aliens. "I'm placing this station under Earth Space Force protection until the threat has passed. All personnel will remain at their posts and follow our security protocols." She turned back to Jake. "Chief Murphy, I need you to brief my security team on everything you've discovered. We have a lot of work to do and not much time to do it." As Jake walked away with the human military team, He could feel the stares of every alien in the plaza. The quiet maintenance worker they had ignored and mocked was actually a highly trained soldier who had been protecting them all along. For the first time in 6 months, Jake Murphy felt like himself again. In the station's main conference room, Captain Hayes spread out holographic maps showing the surrounding space. Jake sat at the table with her security team, feeling strange to be treated as an equal after months of being ignored. "Tell me about." "The enemy fleet," Captain Hayes said to Jake. Jake activated his tablet and projected the sensor data onto the main screen. 47 ships, Captain. They're using stealth technology, but I detected them through their communication signals. They'll arrive in about 58 hours. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster, the ship's tactical officer, studied the data. "These are Nexus collective vessels. We've been tracking this group for months. They specialize in attacking research stations and stealing advanced technology." Commander Tysek, who had been invited to the meeting, made clicking sounds with it. His crystal body, the Nexus Collective? But they operate in the Outer Rim territories. Why would they come here? Because someone invited them, Jake said quietly. He pulled up the coded messages he had intercepted. Dr. Vextar and Psi Lara have been sending detailed information about this station for weeks. Ship schedules, defense, systems, crew numbers, everything the Nexus would need for a successful attack. Captain Hayes nodded grimly. The Nexus doesn't attack randomly. They always have inside help. "Chief Murphy, your work uncovered a major security breach." "But I don't understand," Commander Tysak said. "How did a human maintenance worker detect what our advanced security systems missed?" Captain Hayes smiled and looked at Jake. "Chief, Murphy wasn't just doing maintenance work, Commander. He was doing what humans do best. He was watching, learning, and putting pieces together that others missed." She stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. "Commander, what do you know about human military doctrine?" "Very little," the Zephyrian admitted. "Human technology is not as advanced as ours. Your ships are smaller, your weapons less powerful." "That's exactly what our enemies think too," Captain Hayes said, "and that's why they keep losing to us." Jake watched as the captain began explaining something that most aliens never understood about humans. Other races focused on their greatest strengths. The Karathi built massive ships with huge weapons. The Velans used speed and grace in battle. The Zephyrians relied on superior technology and computing power. "Humans are different," Captain Hayes continued. "We don't have the strongest weapons or the fastest ships. But we have something else. We adapt, we watch. We learn how our enemies think, and then we use that knowledge against them." She turned back to Commander Tysak. "Chief Murphy spent 6 months on this station. During that time, he learned how every system worked, how every person behaved, and how all the pieces fit together. When something changed, he noticed it immediately. The Nexus spies thought they were safe because they were dealing with a primitive human janitor," Lieutenant Commander Foster added. "They never suspected that Jake was actually analyzing their every move." Jake felt proud, but also a little sad. "They treated me like I was stupid. Dr. Vextar and Salara talked freely around me because they thought I couldn't understand important things. They never realized I was recording everything they said." Commander Tysak's crystal body pulsed, with different colors, showing he was thinking hard. "You mean humans deliberately appear weak to fool their enemies?" "Not exactly," Captain Hayes said. "We don't pretend to be weak. We just don't waste energy trying to look strong. We'd rather spend our time learning about our opponents and finding their weaknesses." Jake pulled up a new display showing the approaching Nexus fleet. "Captain, I've been studying their formation and approach vector. They're coming in exactly the way I expected based on the intelligence that was sent to them." "Good work, Chief. That means our countermeasures should be effective." Commander Tysak looked confused. "Countermeasures?" But Captain, your ship is alone. How can one vessel fight an entire fleet? Captain Hayes and her officers exchanged looks. Jake could see they were trying not to smile. Commander, Captain. Hayes said gently, the Defiant isn't alone. She's just the only ship you can see. Before Commander Tysak could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Jake recognized the pattern. These were proximity alarms, warning that multiple ships were approaching fast. That's not the Nexus fleet, Jake said, checking his sensors. They're still 2 days away. Captain Hayes spoke into her communication. Device, control, this is Hayes. Execute Revelation Protocol. Through the conference room window, Jake watched in amazement as ships began appearing out of nowhere. First 1, then 5, then dozens of human vessels decloaked around the station. They had been there all along, hidden by advanced stealth. Technology. Commander Tysak's crystal body flashed bright white with shock. Impossible. Our sensors showed no other ships in this area. Human stealth technology, Lieutenant Commander Foster explained. We've been positioning ships throughout this system for the past week, ever since Chief Murphy sent his first warning. Jake stared out at the fleet of human ships. There were sleek destroyers, heavy cruisers, and even a few massive battleships. All of them had been invisible to the station's sensors. But how did you know to bring so many ships? Commander Tysak asked. Captain Hayes looked at Jake with respect. Because Chief Murphy's intelligence report was extremely detailed. He didn't just tell us about the threat. He told us exactly what kind of threat it was, how many ships to expect, and when they would arrive. That allowed us to prepare the perfect response. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. For months, the aliens had dismissed his observations as unimportant. Now those same observations had allowed the human fleet to prepare a trap that would save everyone on the station. The Nexus Collective is famous for their surprise attacks, Captain Hayes continued. They rely on superior firepower and the element of surprise. But this time, we'll be the ones surprising them. She activated a holographic display showing the human fleet's positions. We've studied every Nexus attack for the past 5 years. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, and their preferred escape routes. When they arrive, they'll find themselves facing a perfectly prepared defense. Commander Tysak was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke in a voice that sounded different than before. Captain Hayes, I owe you and Chief Murphy an apology. I dismissed his warnings as human paranoia. I was wrong. You weren't wrong to be cautious, Commander, Captain Hayes said diplomatically. But you were wrong to dismiss Chief Murphy's analysis. He has more experience with threat assessment than most officers in the Galactic Defense Forces. Jake looked around the table at the faces of his human colleagues. These people treated him with respect and listened to his ideas. It felt good to be valued for his skills instead of ignored because of his species. Captain, Jake said, I've been thinking about the Nexus attack plan. Based on the intelligence they received, they'll expect light resistance from the station's defensive systems. They won't be prepared for a full fleet engagement. Excellent point, Chief. Lieutenant Commander Foster, adjust our battle plan based on Chief Murphy's assessment. I want those Nexus ships to walk right into our trap. As the meeting continued, Jake realized that everything was about to change. The Nexus fleet was coming, confident they would face an unprepared research station. Instead, they would encounter a carefully planned human ambush. The quiet maintenance worker had done more than just detect a threat. He had helped set the stage for a battle that would show the galaxy what humans were really capable of when they had time to prepare. 2 days later, Jake stood in the station's command center watching the main display screen. 47 Nexus Collective ships were approaching Harmony's edge, just as his calculations had predicted. The enemy fleet moved in perfect formation. Confident they were about to attack a defenseless research station, around Jake, aliens and humans worked together at control stations. Commander Tysak stood beside Captain Hayes, both of them watching the approaching enemy. The Zephyrians. Crystal body pulsed with nervous energy. Enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 10 minutes, reported Lieutenant Commander Foster from his tactical station. Jake checked his own scanner. The Nexus ships were following exactly the approach pattern he had expected based on the intelligence Dr. Vextar and Sylara had sent them. They were coming in fast and low, planning to overwhelm the station's defenses with superior firepower. What they didn't know was that 63 human warships waited in perfect ambush positions throughout the system. The enemy couldn't see them because of advanced stealth technology, but Jake could track their positions on his maintenance scanner. "Captain," Jake said quietly, "the lead Nexus ship is sending activation signals to the station. They're trying to contact their spies." Dr. Vextar and Sylara had been arrested hours earlier, but the Nexus fleet didn't know that yet. They expected their agents to disable the station's defenses from the inside. Captain Hayes nodded. "Let them keep signaling. The longer they think their plan is working, the deeper they'll commit to the attack." Jake watched the enemy ships spread out into attack formation. In a few minutes, they would be exactly where the human fleet wanted them. He felt nervous but also excited. After months of being ignored and dismissed, he was about to see his intelligence work save thousands of lives. "Enemy fleet is beginning their attack run," Foster announced. "All Nexus ships are committed to their approach vector. Execute Hammer Protocol." Captain Hayes ordered calmly. Jake had never seen anything like what happened next. All around the Nexus fleet, human ships suddenly appeared as if materializing from empty space. The enemy found themselves surrounded by vessels they never knew were there. The Nexus ships tried to change course, but it was too late. They were trapped in a perfect sphere of human firepower with nowhere to run. Their superior technology meant nothing when they were caught completely off guard. The battle lasted only 18 minutes. Jake watched on his screen as the human fleet systematically disabled or destroyed every Nexus vessel. A few enemy ships tried to escape, but human interceptors were waiting at every possible exit route. When the shooting stopped, 31 Nexus ships had been captured intact, and 16 had been destroyed. Not a single human vessel was seriously damaged. The most feared pirate fleet in the Outer Rim had been defeated without managing to fire a single shot at the research station. "All enemy vessels neutralized," Foster reported. "No human casualties. Minimal damage to our fleet." Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. Commander Tysak was standing beside him, and the Zephyrian's crystal body was glowing with what Jake had learned was a sign of deep respect. "Chief Murphy," Commander Tysak said formally, "your intelligence work made this victory possible. On behalf of everyone on the station, I thank you." Before Jake could respond, new alarms sounded throughout the command center. Another ship was approaching the station, but this one was different. It was massive, easily 3 times larger than any vessel in the human fleet. "Korathi battleship approaching," Foster announced. "It's the flagship of General Cthulhu." Jake had heard of General Cthulhu. He was the most famous military leader in Korathi history, a warrior who had never lost a battle. The general commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. "What's he doing here?" Commander Tysak wondered aloud. Captain Hayes looked puzzled too. "The general wasn't part of our operation. I have no idea why he's coming to the station." 20 minutes later, Jake found himself standing in the main plaza with hundreds of other beings, as General Cthulhu materialized in a transport beam. The Korathi leader was even more imposing in person than in pictures. He stood 9 feet tall, covered in thick gray armor that looked like it had survived countless battles. The general's eyes swept across the crowd, until they found Jake. To everyone's amazement, the most decorated warrior in galactic history walked directly toward the quiet human maintenance worker. Jake felt his heart pounding as the general stopped in front of him. He expected to be questioned or maybe even arrested for his role in the recent events. Instead, General Cthulhu did something that stunned every alien in the plaza. He saluted Jake with perfect military precision. "Sir," the general said in his deep, rumbling voice, "I have come to personally thank you for the most brilliant intelligence operation I have witnessed in 40 years of military service." Jake's mouth fell open. The most feared warrior in the galaxy had just called him sir and saluted him. Around the plaza, aliens were staring in shock and disbelief. "In all my campaigns," General Cthulhu continued, addressing the crowd, but keeping his eyes on Jake, "I have never seen such masterful reconnaissance work. This human saw what we all missed, understood what we could not comprehend, and acted with courage while we dismissed him as insignificant." The general turned to face the assembled aliens. "Let this be a lesson to all of us. True strength is not always loud and obvious. Sometimes the most dangerous warrior is the one who works quietly in the shadows, watching and learning until the perfect moment to strike." Jake felt overwhelmed by the general's words. For 6 months, he had endured mockery and dismissal from the alien crew. Now the greatest military mind in the galaxy was praising his work in front of everyone. "Chief Murphy," General Cthulhu said, turning back to Jake, "I would be honored to have you serve under my command. The Karathi Defense Force could use an officer with your skills." Jake was flattered, but he shook his head politely. "Thank you, General, but I think I'll stay here. There's still a lot of work to do on this station." The general smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. A wise answer. The best soldiers know their duty. As General Cthulhu left to return to his ship, Jake noticed how differently the alien crew was treating him. Dr. Zephyros, one of the Zephyrian scientists, approached him nervously. "Chief Murphy," Dr. Zephyros said, "I wonder if you might review our new research proposal. We want to make sure our security protocols are adequate." Throughout the rest of the day, aliens who had previously ignored Jake came to ask for his advice. The Karathi science team wanted him to check their laboratory. Security. The Velen diplomats asked for his opinion on communication protocols. Even Commander Tysek requested a complete review of the station's defensive systems. Jake realized that nothing had really changed about him. He was still the same quiet, methodical person he had always been. He still preferred fixing machines to making speeches, and he still noticed small details that others missed. But now the galaxy knew that when humans speak softly, it's not because they have nothing important to say. It's because they don't need to raise their voices to be heard. The most dangerous predator is often the one that waits patiently in the shadows, watching and learning until the perfect moment to act. That evening, Jake returned to his maintenance duties with a smile on his face. He had new energy readings to investigate in Sector 12, and this time when he found something unusual, he knew people would listen. As he walked through the corridors of Harmony's Edge, Jake noticed that the aliens no longer looked through him as if he didn't exist. They nodded respectfully when they passed, and some even stopped to ask how his work was going. Jake Murphy was still a maintenance worker, still quiet and methodical. But now everyone understood that sometimes the most important person on a space station is the one who pays attention to the small details that others ignore. The quiet human had earned something more valuable than fear or admiration. He had earned respect.